Okay, so I had a project that I was doing when I got the Big Joe, and I was trying to make a drawer for a shelf over here to put a stereo system into, and I had bought some wood that warped on me. But I didn't want to waste the material, so I banged it together. I made the last little tweaks. It was out of spec, it was ugly, and because it was my first experiment with datoing and whatnot, my corners were kind of beat up, especially where this softwood chipped. So I have a box at that point, and I didn't really want to just put junk in it, and it wasn't going to work for my drawer. And I like being creative with the things that I have on hand, so I decided I was going to turn it into an end table shelf, do some of my first notching, very rough notching with, again, what was available on hand. Ran into some hiccups there. At a certain point, I'm just embracing that, hey, this is a lot of practice for me. I'm doing my changeovers of my shopsmith. I'm trying some funky stuff, notching and doing some pegs to reinforce all this. And I'm doing a unusual funky piece of furniture in the first place, which is kind of sort of the surprise in the end. And as I'm doing this, I'm inspired by the legs and sort of the look and the roughness of this whole thing. And I want to start, engaging and embracing the all the poor choices. I don't like the corners though, so I decide I want to chop them off. That's what I've been standing here funky holding this for. And this was going to be a heavy duty drawer for stereo equipment. There were going to be holes cut in the bottom and such. This is why it's such heavy duty ply in the bottom and set flush, which is why it's going to be this rough sort of table. But I'm very proud of these very cleanly cut angles. It took me a little while to figure out exactly what degrees and such to be able to produce on my shopsmith these lovely triangles of this very interesting stressed wood that had all these inclusions from sap that I used acetone to remove, that I can make these pieces and then sort of chop my corners. I'm going to adhere this and then use sort of this knotty, heavy, untrimmed peg style with a smaller dowel in oak to peg this on, do all the corners, do the front corners with a slightly different design. And I'm kind of gearing this towards an animal that I believe I see in it, because that's what I do with my art. I see something, I sort of see a vision of it, and then I focus my journey on making it occur. I used the little one to rough in, but then this has been a lifesaver in many situations where I've been able to use it to span a gap and bring all this back into flush, so that when I adhere, glue that piece on, I don't have any low spots on the corners. Anyway, I look forward to adding on to this video. I know I talk a lot, but it's very difficult to summarize what one has done, and even more difficult for me to record myself with my cell phone, which I typically use to listen to music. Alright, so I got the triangles glued onto the corners yesterday evening, and I let them dry overnight, and I'm now using a hand plane to go through and flush all my edges out, and then I will come around and flush these flat with the interior set triangle. Leave a comment at this point if you already feel like you see something. Because I'm embracing the naughty choices I made in wood selection, I found this, what I believe to be beautiful wood that had stress growths on it, where it was inclusions with sap. And then I flattened the back, flattened my triangular cut, adhered this last night with glue, as I said, and now I am planing the surfaces flat. Doing it is, there's no real way to hold this thing down other than to sit on it, which is convenient because it's easier on my back, but it means some rather unusual holding techniques, at least I believe, because I'm more or less doing a pull. It's going to take a while, for me at least, to get the aesthetic finish of this on the outside, and then I'll move on to my next inspired, over-the-top, excessive, and poorly done, I'm sure, aesthetic touch that is also for mechanical strength, but you'll see that when I get to it. That's a corner. I'm gonna move on, take a break. Pegs to hold these pieces inside, and then pegs to hold those pieces on. Excessive, over the top, uncut, unfinished. I'll sand everything before I set the pegs, but it'll go to the knobby, knotty sort of look. Safety first. Because this is, I've already done one corner. This is the most awkward one yet, and the most awkward of them all. I'm about to set up and do these cuts to make a section of wood that I can glue together and get that cut for when I, as I said, cut it down in strips. Hopefully it works. Next is to get some sacrificial wood and make some cuts and try and lean down for this little bitty strip of material that I'm trying to produce for this finish. So, one aspect of the project has kind of nagged me a little bit as I've gone on, the more animalistic features I have added, and that is that the feet were just 2x4s, hitting the floor, 2 in the back, straight down, 2 in the front at an angle, and they needed something to give them a feel. I want to add feet, animal-shaped feet for this particular creature, and I have come up with some designs that I'm going to cut out these patterns out of the last of this stressed wood with the sap that I have taken out that I use for the corners, and that will tie it in further to the floor. This particular animal has 4 toes in the front, 5 toes in the back. Kudos to anybody who knows offhand what that is. So at the moment I am just working on giving the feet, some shapes. I've outlined where the actual leg lands, and this, while it represents the more or less outlined shape of a frog foot, I've said the word, this accentuates the pad look and leaves the body and the toes themselves still supported enough to not break off. And I just got it rough with this for a little while, and then I will go in with a sandpaper and just sand finish all these rough areas to make them look a little more uniform. I'm considering doing some sculpting on the eye socket areas as well to give some depth, but the feet, at least like any other claw foot on a table, would be carved if they were something somebody took the time to deal with. So here we go. Relatively similar. And now for feet. Okay, now I'm in the process of setting my pegs in my corners. I've done most of the other sides. I have one last side on the front that's with the insets that are from behind, and then the last corner, back corner, that's pegs on the outside. So. Alright, that is the last of the corner pegs. Now it's on to the side pegs, or decorative plugs, whatever you want to call them. What's that? .100 grit. This is just the first. I'm still going to go through all the grits, but breaking over the edges was the most labor-intensive part. My arms are quite sore. I still have to do these corners here, and then I will move on. Anyway, just want to share. I'm working currently on gluing in my inlays. I have already done 2 out of the 4 sides. The back, which was pinned in by both of the 45s, and one side. Now, because this was not a forethought, it was an afterthought, these pieces go straight in. They don't actually extend into the corners behind here. So I have pre-cut 2 pieces to my approximately, they're overrun so that I can trim them down after they're glued in place, but I have already done my 45s for my dead ends and for my front to center. So here we go. All right, those are in. I want to preface this section by saying a couple of things. I have already carved one side, one eye. Now, I'm using a set of carving knives, tools that I got from Amazon that I have used previously. This is not my first time carving. I have a history of carving as a youth, whatnot. But these tools I used to carve on a skateboard project. It's another video. The challenge for anybody who's ever carved is trying to do 2 of something that is A, symmetrical, and B, mirror image. So I'm doing the circle, the eye, but the object I'm working around, because of the stand it's on and the shape it's on, is kind of geared towards one side, and wood works a certain way, so I'm gonna have to work where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try and keep this short because this is a long video. Everything else I've done has been 15-20 minutes for the section of the work that I have shot, but this, the carving of the eye, has been a lengthy period. So it will likely be fast forward. I hope this is worth the squeeze. I'm not a master carver by any means, but I'm fairly decent at getting what I see in my head to work with what the material will do. So the majority of the carving is done, and at this point a little sanding is necessary to see where my high spots and low spots are. I believe I have gotten it as deep as the other side. Changing the texture with sanding will help give it some tone and shading that lighting will help. So, ooh, my hand is cashed. Well, let's see. What do you think? It's a little more pronounced here. I think that's just a little bit of sanding to bring that down even. Okay, so just the dowel with occasionally spraying it with alcohol, it did take a bend and it did keep it. However, I am going to be leaving for the evening and I wanted it to stay moist longer. So I elevated it, I wrapped it in Preston seal in a taco from one end to the other with a gap opening in the middle where I can spritz with alcohol into the middle. And then I wrapped a couple of bands around the ends just to keep it snug and keep the alcohol against the wood. I have left the ends open so that the water has a tendency to want to capillary the alcohol out the ends, and any evaporation that occurs out the ends, and it encourages it to actually penetrate the wood. And I have cranked it down. It's not touching yet, but I will come back later this evening and crank it further, add more alcohol, and let it sit longer. Because again, I'm just trying to make sort of a lower lip feature for the beast, and I wanted to be round. There's a lot of square on there, and I have all these other round features, and I wanted to incorporate it this way. We'll see if it works. Okay, and just before I left for the evening to go skating, I had the thought that, only other thing I'm missing is heat, so this is a therapeutic style heating blanket with the fabric removed because this is a wet dry version on low. Nothing crazy, just sitting there on low. Radiating heat into the center, wrapped gently, not too tight, with a bungee just to kind of hold it together. It's not under it because I wrapped it in place, so it's not pinching any of the coil elements on it. Set up to take the second bow, soaked with alcohol, set on high. Third bow, other end. Alcohol, heat, rinse, repeat. That's as far as I'm going to take it. That is center and then both sides 12 inches from the end. Well, this part's done being curved. This was a 36-inch long dowel that I have on the edge to edge, shortened by just a little over 3/4 of an inch and imparted roughly 2 3/4 inches of rise, and this is to a 1 1/4 inch oak dowel. There it is in place. Now I gotta say that it was challenging enough to bend, but I lined this up, held it in place, marked where the center should be for these two pegs, put it on a block, held it by hand, and aimed and shot both of these with a handheld drill. And I'm quite pleased that they are almost dead on, parallel, and perfect, exactly where I needed them to be to get this at the right angle for the right look. It's finally done. It's been more than a month now, a number of weeks working at odd hours, morning, evening, late night, and My family, my wife's kind of seen it in some parts, and I told her that it was a beast. And here in the later words, the word frog has come up. My daughter is really the only one who has been in on the secret that I've kept about one of the things I did with this. And I'm about to bring her out so she can see it in the finished product, and hopefully she's impressed. Anyway, let me show you. Now, I hope when you see this, you see a frog. My naughty frog, my naughty wood frog. Door hinges that I had to reverse and countersink the opposite direction. Why don't you come pop it up?
Is it dried?
Yeah, it's dried.
It feels wet.
It's just shiny. What do you think of the bed?
That's so cute.
Anyway, that's why it's open in the front. Alright, our future resident is skeptical. It has a lot of odor from the lacquer, and it's a new bed. We put a couple of teeny little treats in there to entice him and his baby, which is a little puppy that he carries around, plays with, tosses in the air, almost like a dog. And he is checking it out. No pressure. Though he might have a little memory of it because I did toss him into it while it was in the garage, while the front bar was still loose and adjustable. And I closed it on him to make sure that he could get out through the opening. And in a panic he did, so I knew it was wide enough, and that's where it is now. Yeah. The treats were kind of his interest, but man, once his baby got in there, he was like, wait a second, that's mine. So, yeah, treat number one. Everything I've made for him has required this sort of a break-in process. But he becomes so second nature to them that they're definitely his when they are all said and done.
Just pulled it out and took it.
Yeah. That's what he does.